So hello and good morning. Welcome to the EduphoreIAS, the live Hindu analysis class. Today the date is 18th of October and we are starting with the Hindu. So first on the front page. So here we have the first page and the biggest news that we have from yesterday, of course, apart from Israel Hamas, of course. So second, you can see this news related to the same-sex marriages. So cannot legalize same-sex marriage, says SC bench. So constitution bench जो थी, जो 5 जजेस की बेंच थी, मेजॉरिटी ओपिनियन ने ये कहा है of 5 judge constitution bench that only the legislature can recognize such marriage and courts cannot intervene. It acts there is no fundamental right to marry. Remember, we don't have fundamental right to marry, right? But right to marry is a part of, you can say, not directly the fundamental right, but right to life and personal liberty, that is Article 21. So therefore, not directly the fundamental right, but of course you can say the part of this Article 21 itself. So therefore, somewhat this is what said, and this is a very balanced decision, you can say, by the judiciary, because it has maintained restraint as well. फाइन, क्योंकि इस पे हमेशा ये लगते रहे जुडिशियल एक्टिविज्म के आरोप लगते रहे, बट इस टाइम सीधा कह दिया कि ये लेजिस्लेचर की डोमेन है एंड यही गवर्नमेंट भी चाहती थी. काफ़ी टाइम पहले भी इस पे जब हियरिंग चल रही थी कोर्ट में 2 जज बेंच के, तो उसमें भी हमने डिस्कस किया था कि कहीं ना कहीं उस टाइम पे भी यही था कि ये जो मुद्दा है सारा वो पार्लियामेंट के हाथ में छोड़ दिया जाए, पार्लियामेंट इस पे लॉ बनाएगी, बिकॉज सच काइंड ऑफ थिंग्स आर नॉट प्रेजेंटली इन goes well with the ethos of Indian culture and civilization, you can say somewhat. It is Indian culture because we have not yet westernized, let us say. So therefore, some such things, I mean, they have a number of rights, fine. They can have, they can adopt children and so on, but court has not yet granted them the right to marriage. Remember this much. So LGBTQIA plus activist voiced disappointment, of course, because they wanted to this right to marry. So voicing their disappointment in the Supreme Court verdict on same-sex marriages, LGBTQIA plus, that activists and legal experts said that whatever recognitions have been granted in the minority judgments were good and welcome but not enough. Fine. So 3 versus 2 जो CJI हैं, जो जस्टिस संजय किशन कौल जी हैं, उनकी जो 2 लोग हैं माइनॉरिटी, उन judgment उनकी रही है, and both of them declared that queer people had a fundamental right to form relationships and the state was obligated to recognize and grant legal status to such unions so that same-sex couples could avail themselves of the material benefits provided by law. कि relations बना सकते हैं, ठीक है, but not yet been granted the right to marry. ठीक है, okay. At least 500 people killed in Israeli airstrike on Gaza hospital. So this is an ongoing process. Hundreds of tests planned, ISRO chief. Apart from that, what else important? President gives away National Film Awards. Okay. And this year's the prestigious Dada Saheb Phalke Award was conferred on the veteran actor Wahida Rahman. Fine. That's it as far as this page is concerned. Supreme Court ने finally SC Gibbs Narvekar, he is the Maharashtra speaker, Maharashtra की जो legislature है उसकी speaker है ये state legislative assembly. Last chance to set timeline for anti-defection proceedings. Fine. तो महाराष्ट्र के पॉलिटिक्स में देख सकते हो फैक्शंस काफ़ी, शिवसेना फिर उसके बाद एनसीपी के बीच में, तो उस पर उनके जो फैक्शन हैं, उनके जो MLAs हैं, उन पर डिसीजन लेने को कहा है सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने जल्दी से. एंड डिफेंस मिनिस्ट्री आस्क्ड इट्स डिपार्टमेंट्स टू सेट अप सेल्फी पॉइंट्स टू शोकेस गुड वर्क. फाइन. स्कूल जॉब्स केस, कलकत्ता हाई कोर्ट इशू गाइडलाइंस फॉर मीडिया. ओके, एनीहाउ, देन नॉट दैट्स इंपॉर्टेंट. Will continue to struggle for legal recognition to same-sex marriages. Of course, LGBT community जो है वो इस डायरेक्शन में काम करती रहेगी और स्ट्रगल जो है ये जारी रखेगी. Okay. So this page is from this Delhi city page, so not that important. Those from Delhi, please have a look at it. Otherwise, स्पीकर ने ये कहा है जो हमने फर्स्ट पेज पे देखा, विल वर्क टू डिटरमिन व्हाट इज अनकॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल एनी हाउ. Okay, so here you have politics, lots of politics. ST status, that is scheduled tribes status for Meiteis community examined and rejected in 1982 and 2001 government records show. Fine. So जो मणिपुर में हमने देखा मैती वर्सेस जो मणिपुर में कुकी के बीच में चल रहा है जो काफी टाइम से ऐसा दिस कन्फ्लिक्ट. सो कहीं ना कहीं मैतीस ने डिमांड की थी कि हमें एसटी स्टेटस दी जाए, बट अभी तक दी नहीं गई है. 1982 में इसको रिजेक्ट कर दिया गया था. यूनियन गवर्नमेंट हाउएवर डिड नॉट सबमिट एनी ऑफ दिस रिकॉर्ड्स बिफोर अ सिंगल जज बेंच व्हिच वाज हियरिंग द मैतीस पिटीशन. ओके. Okay. So again, politics, lots of news related to politics. Not that important for us. हाँ, ये देख सकते हो केरला मोल्स. केरला जो है विचार कर रहा है प्लांटिंग बैम्बू अलोंग मनार्स गल्फ ऑफ मनार गैप रोड टू अवॉइड लैंडस्लिप्स. फाइन, इस एरिया में जो देख सकते हो. सो दैट कुड बी अ गुड थिंग. गल्फ ऑफ मनार इराक रीजन की बात करें बेसिकली. फाइन, वी हैव हियर वन नेशनल पार्क एज वेल, दैट इज कोची धनुषकोडी कोची धनुषकोडी नेशनल हाईवे इन मनार. Munnar, it's not Mannar, it's Munnar, remember, not Gulf of Mannar. Conceptual video of proposed watchtower piques interest in Bengaluru. Okay, जब आएगा देख लेंगे. So here we have the editorial page from the today's Hindu, and first left side article is Law and Custom. Court verdict leaves queer people with long struggle ahead for equality. From the first page, this is what we have seen. Fine. तो सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने ये कहा है, द सुप्रीम कोर्ट ऑफ इंडिया रिफ्यूजल टू अकॉर्ड लीगल रिकग्निशन टू मैरिजेस बिटवीन पर्सन्स ऑफ द सेम सेक्स इज अ ह्यूज लीगल सेटबैक टू द क्वेयर कम्युनिटी इन द कंट्री. Given the progress in law in recent years and the deepening of the meaning of individual rights, there was a widespread expectations that 5-judge constitutional bench would give the Special Marriage Act, a law that allows any two people to marry, a gender-neutral interpretation to include people belonging to the same sex as well. Over the years, amplitude of Article 21, that is right to personal life and liberty of the Constitution, has been expanded to cover the rights of privacy, dignity and marital choice. That right to marry the person of your choice even comes under this. But the highest court has stopped short of the extra step needed to allow marriages or civil unions that are not heterosexual, that is homosexual. So all 5 judges have chosen to leave it to the legislature to enact such a law. Chief Justice of India D.Y. Chandrachud and Justice Sanjay Kishan Kaul have ruled that queer couples have a right to seek recognition for their union, but declined to read down the provisions of the SMA, that is Special Marriage Act, to this that effect कि उसके provisions जो है वो इससे relate होते हैं. इनके इस SMA के अंडर इनको right दिया जाए, special right for marrying, marriages be permitted between the homosexual couples. So इस चीज को इन्होंने reject कर दिया है. On the other hand, जो majority judgment रही है, that is of Justice Ravindra Bhatt, Justice Hima Kohli, Justice P.S. Narasimha, reject the position holding that any such recognition can only be based on a statute, that is law. In effect, the court has accepted the government's view that any move to legalize same-sex marriages will fall in the legislature's domain. Yes, this was the point of this central government. So in concluding remarks that there is no fundamental right to marry, the court has negated the expectation that it would not allow discrimination against same-sex couples in the marital domain to continue. Marriage is indeed a social institution with its own legal requirements and conditions for what constitutes a valid marriage. The right to seek social and legal validation through marriage is a matter of individual choice, protected by the Constitution, but the court still views it as being subject to statutory limitations. ठीक बात है. Given that large section of India may be opposed to the legalization of same-sex marriages on religious and cultural grounds, the possibility of Parliament taking the initiative to do so is quite bleak. काफी कम है चांस ऐसा. The LGBTQIA plus community may now have to take heart from the court's direction that the government should form a committee to decide the rights and entitlements of the queer couples. The community, however, still has quite a struggle ahead before the law catches up with its yearning for equality. So after this, not when court didn't recognize this union of the same-sex couples, so now the route, of course, has been opened or lies with the parliament itself, and now the government has to take the action. And for that in that direction, the this Supreme Court has directed or suggested the government, in fact, to come up with a committee in order to recognize their rights and so to provide them the basic facilities and so on, but without recognizing this right to marriage. So of course it has been left over for the parliament to decide or take action over this. This is an interesting one. Centralized procurement as a powerful health idea कि जो भी इंडिया में ड्रग्स रिलेटेड प्रोक्योरमेंट है वो सेंट्रलाइज्ड हो सकती है, सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट करे और उसको फर्दर डिस्ट्रीब्यूट करे. उस फ्रंट पे कुछ चैलेंजेस भी है, क्यों ऐसा करना चाहिए. तो बिगेस्ट जो चैलेंज है इसमें वो है एक तो प्राइस एंड सेकंड इज क्वालिटी. फाइन. तो इन दो चीजों को लेके इन्होंने बात की है, एंड दैट इज समथिंग अ गुड डिफरेंट पर्सपेक्टिव हियर. So therefore, we will be discussing this centralized procurement as a powerful health idea. Imagine, okay, giving here the examples of McDonald's, for example, let us say, बड़ा पाव महाराष्ट्र साइड ज़्यादा फेमस है, तो बड़ा पाव सब लोग खाते हैं, चंडीगढ़ में भी easily available है. So they are giving a very good analogy that imagine what happens if this बड़ा पाव जो भी बेच रहा है वो ऐसा करे कि किसको टक्कर देना शुरू कर दे, मैकडोनल्ड्स को, और वो अपनी चेन्स फ्रेंचाइजीज खोल दे अक्रॉस इंडिया. फाइन. हंड्रेड्स ऑफ फ्रेंचाइजीज. फाइन. And then what will happen? So they will sell clean, hygienic and tasty vada paos in the millions in the years to come if they are doing such. What a great idea, and let us hope that somebody actually does this. But here is a quick question. Should each franchise purchase their own potatoes, or would you much rather have a centralized procurement team to do the task? अगर hundreds of franchise हैं तो क्या सबको अपने अपने लेवल पे परचेज करनी चाहिए पोटैटोज रेटर से, और a centralized team or procurement team should do the task? You will quickly realize that there are two central problems to solve this: price and quality. These are the two central problems. For example, each franchise conducting negotiations with potato sellers becomes a problem when it comes to the price. Yes. सोचो कि आप एक एक इंडिविजुअल 100 इंडिविजुअल अलग अलग जाके नेगोशिएशंस कर रहे हैं और 100 लोगों की एक टीम जाके नेगोशिएट कर रही है, तो ऑफ कोर्स प्राइस के लेवल पे डिफरेंस तो देखने को मिलेगा ना. सीधी सी बात है. The amount of potatoes that the entire business needs to purchase will be more than the amount of potatoes that each franchise will need to buy. So who do you think will be able to negotiate a better price, the centralized team or each of the individual franchise? Of course, the centralized team. So each franchise conducting negotiations with the potato seller is also, also problematic when it comes to the quality now, because each franchise might have a different idea of what is acceptable quality, and each franchise might have a different idea about what makes for a good potato. But what would then lead to each franchises vada paos having a different taste, and that just will not do in franchise model. ठीक है कि अगर हर 100 बड़ा पाव की फ्रेंचाइजी है, 100 हो सकता है कि अलग अलग स्टेट्स में हो, टेस्ट वेरी कर सकती है. सो इस केस में सेंट्रलाइज्ड मॉडल हो सकता है कि उतना इफेक्टिव ना हो, बट प्राइस के सेंस में हो सकता है. सो दिस ब्रिंग्स अप अनदर क्वेश्चन. सो व्हाई शुड हॉस्पिटल्स बी एनी डिफरेंट व्हेन इट कम्स टू ड्रग प्रोक्योरमेंट? ठीक है कि क्यों ना सरकार जो है या जो हॉस्पिटल्स हैं वो एक चेन बना के ड्रग की प्रोक्योरमेंट करें बजाय कि इंडिविजुअली. So in India की केस को डिस्कस कर रहे हैं. Many countries and international organizations like McDonald's have shown that a pooled buyer model, remember the kind of model that is pooled buyer model for drug procurement, address many issues that are related to price efficiency, stockouts and quality concerns. But for reasons that have remained mysterious for decades, the central government chooses to ignore the merits of pooled procurement when it comes to schemes such as central government health scheme, the Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana, एंड द एम्प्लॉइज स्टेट इंश्योरेंस स्कीम। ये ऐसी स्कीम्स हैं जहां पे पूल्ड प्रोक्योरमेंट करने की खास करके इन स्कीम्स के लेवल पे हमें देखने को मिल सकती है, राइट। दैट द सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट चूजेस टू इग्नोर द मेरिट्स, कि इन जगहों पे हमें देखने को मिल सकती है, बट सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट जो है अभी तक ऐसा नहीं कर रही है, इसको इग्नोर कर रही है। सो कॉर्पोरेट हॉस्पिटल चेन्स की अगर बात करें, ऑन द अदर हैंड आर वेल अवेयर ऑफ द बेनिफिट्स ऑफ द पूल्ड प्रोक्योरमेंट, राइट। Patients at these hospitals end up buying these drugs at maximum retail price, of course, but that is another story. We cannot help but wonder why many more hospitals cannot team up to form buyers clubs, benefit from better bargaining power, and then, being not for-profit institution, pass on these cost savings to patients. But we should not forget that we are talking here about the corporate or the private hospitals, and there is a खास करके medical में and all that, you see there's lots of nexus, and also कहीं ना कहीं वी डोंट इवन अगर आप इसको प्रैक्टिकली भी सोचोगे तो इट्स नॉट गोइंग समथिंग इज नॉट गोइंग टू हैपन, स्पेशली इन द प्राइवेट सेक्टर। कॉर्पोरेट हॉस्पिटल की बात करें, प्राइवेट हॉस्पिटल के केस में बात करें कि वो लोग एक बायर्स क्लब फॉर्म करें और बायर्स को ये फैसिलिटी प्रोवाइड करें कि बार्गेनिंग को एक्सरसाइज करते हुए चीपर रेट्स पे मेडिसिन खरीदें। ये गवर्नमेंट जरूर कर सकती है, कंसिडरिंग द वेलफेयर मोटिव ऑफ द गवर्नमेंट। तो फोकस इन दिस पेपर, सो एक दो पेपर्स की हमें बात करें हैं। रिसेंट पेपर है नेशनल कैंसर ग्रिड पूल्ड प्रोक्योरमेंट इनिशिएटिव इंडिया डेमोन्स्ट्रेट्स द वायबिलिटी ऑफ जस्ट सच एन आइडिया, ग्रुप नेगोशिएशंस, यूनिफॉर्म कॉन्ट्रैक्ट्स एंड फाइनली परचेज्ड बाय hospitals associated with the national cancer grid for 14 drug resulted in savings of 13.2 billion rupees। ठीक है कि अगर पूल्ड बाय परचेजेस होती हैं उस केस में तो कहीं ना कहीं हमें इसमें सेविंग्स देखने को मिलती है, ठीक है, क्योंकि अल्टीमेटली क्या है कि अगर 10 लोग मिलकर किसी चीज को खरीद रहे हैं तो उनकी बार्गेनिंग पावर जो है काफी बढ़ जाएगी, बजाय कि एक बंदा अकेले उसको परचेज कर रहा हो या नेगोशिएट कर रहा हो उस चीज के लिए। We are in complete agreement. Our papers unifying India's health markets makes just such an argument. We show that the central government is not consistent in how it covers different categories of beneficiaries under the CGHS, that is central government. What is CGS? सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट की जो 3 स्कीम्स है, सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट हेल्थ स्कीम, द प्रधानमंत्री जन आरोग्य योजना एंड द एम्प्लॉइज स्टेट इंश्योरेंस स्कीम। So these are the 3 things, ESI and PMJ. The same procedure, for example, might be available in one scheme but not the other, and centralized procurement, sadly, we are not seeing till now, not yet a reality। ठीक है, सो फोकस आप देख सकते हो कि आर्टिकल इस पे है कि सरकार को सेंट्रलाइज प्रोक्योरमेंट करनी चाहिए फॉर दिस स्कीम्स, ठीक है, जहां पे काफी सेविंग्स हमें देखने को मिल सकती है। यहाँ पे एक एग्जांपल भी दिया गया कि 14 ड्रग्स, कैंसर रिलेटेड 14 ड्रग्स की प्रोक्योरमेंट करके पूल्ड मॉडल फॉलो करके कहीं ना कहीं 13.2 बिलियन रुपीस सेव की गई है। तो इस तरह से गवर्नमेंट जो है वो सेव कर सकती है। It is not that the central government is unaware of the benefits of the pooled procurement and price discovery. When the central government, through the National AIDS Control Organization, procures male contraceptives, it invites tenders from private manufacturers and then offers to buy from all those who are willing to match the lowest price. So how does the government ensure that the suppliers are not colluding to keep the price high? HLL Life Care Limited, a public sector unit PSU, HLL Life Care Limited is a PSU, Government of India, with the highest manufacturing capacity in India, provides a benchmark price. So all the bidders know that if they are not competitive on price, the government will just procure all its requirements from the HLL and they will be left with unused manufacturing capacity, and as a result face huge fixed cost and overheads। ठीक है, सो इस तरह से अगर कोई बेंचमार्किंग पीएसयू हो जो ऑलरेडी प्रोड्यूस कर रही है चीपर कॉम्पिटिटिव प्राइस पे, सो प्राइवेट सेक्टर्स भी जो है वो कहीं ना कहीं फोर्स्ड होते हैं कि हाँ हमें भी एक कॉम्पिटिटिव प्राइस पे अपने जो प्रोडक्ट्स हैं वो प्रोड्यूस करने हैं, सो दैट कि हमारे प्रोडक्ट्स की भी जो बिडिंग है गवर्नमेंट जो है वो प्रोक्योर कर सके। ठीक है, द गवर्नमेंट कैन फॉलो दिस मॉडल फॉर मोस्ट ऑफ द ड्रग्स इट प्रोक्योर्स, and it has many pharma PSUs that can provide benchmark prices and also ensure that the government has the leverage. The issue of better quality now after better pricing. So better quality goes with, finally, in addition to the cost savings, buyers clubs can ensure better quality by having the supplies tested independently rather than having to rely on the drug regulator to ensure quality। एक बात है कि जो टेस्टिंग है वो कहीं सेपरेट हो, ठीक है, थर्ड पार्टी करे, बजाय कि जो प्रोड्यूस कर रहा है वही करे, फाइन, बिकॉज अगर आप प्रोड्यूस करोगे तो आप यही कहोगे कि हाँ जी हमने तो बहुत बढ़िया प्रोड्यूस किया, फाइन, बट एक न्यूट्रल टेस्टिंग की जरूरत है. दिस इज नॉट अ न्यू आइडिया, दिस इज अ स्टैंडर्ड ऑपरेटिंग प्रोसीजर फॉर बायर्स इन मेनी डेवलप्ड नेशंस. Centralized procurement or pooled procurement is a simple yet powerful idea that has the power and the potential to reduce cost, ensure better deployment of funds in other areas related to healthcare, and ensure availability of life-saving drugs in this country. It is an idea with both theoretical backing and now empirical validation. It is an idea that India should implement at a scale and as soon as possible. So pooled procurement, especially in the drugs, हेल्थ सेक्टर जो है वो सरकार कर सकती है एंड कैन सेव बिलियंस ऑफ रुपीज. फाइन, दिस इज व्हाट द क्रक्स ऑफ दिस एंटायर आर्टिकल इज. फाइन, मूविंग टू द नेक्स्ट. ओके, this article is about when the tigers and the jackals get the same protection. So this is about the Wildlife Protection Act 2022 amendment, and even earlier we have discussed this in detail when this amendment was actually introduced in this year only. So without an objective or applicable process, in brief, Schedule 1, which confers the highest protection, contains about 600 species of vertebrates and hundreds of invertebrates, while Schedule 2 contains about 2000 species. Fine. So number of species being covered under this new amendment schedules has been enlarged or increased. Fine. This is one of the important thing that we need to notice. So issues क्या है? Issues for conversion or conservation, basically, not conversion. So what are the issues related to the conservation of these resource, these species? So the first issue with this listing regards conservation itself. The Wildlife Protection Act was originally intended to regulate the use of various species. Originally, the original Wildlife Protection Act of 1972, recent amendment has been done in the 2022. So it restricts, original Wildlife Protection Act actually of 1972 restrict trade and police the trafficking of species. The original act is written in this form, with research being an exception under the hunting clause. The new act, that is Amendment 1, goes one step further by aligning itself with the CITES and includes the CITES appendices as well. तो साइट्स की भी इंपॉर्टेंट है, इसकी भी शेड्यूल्स होती हैं. जैसे हम कोई स्पीसीज की बात करते हैं तो कीप ऑन आस्किंग वेदर वाइल्ड लाइफ प्रोटेक्शन एक्ट के अंदर किस शेड्यूल में है या साइट्स की किस अपेंडिक्स में है. दैट एक्चुअली दिस अपेंडिसेस ऑफ साइट्स बिकम्स इंपॉर्टेंट स्पेशली फ्रॉम द प्रीलिम्स एग्जाम पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू. So the listing of species has two direct effects. One is, even if it were to have benefits for conservation, species would have to be prioritized. So this is the first benefit. Second benefit could be, every action has consequence, and in law often perverse ones. For example, the Tree Preservation Act of Kerala and Karnataka prescribe the falling of native trees. Instead of promoting conservation, these acts disincentivize plantation owners from planting native trees and promote exotics such as silver oak that they can cut anytime they need to. ठीक है. So कुछ acts ऐसे भी हैं जो कहीं ना कहीं encourage करने की जगह discourage करते हैं in order to plant the native trees. What other issues are? So in the case of Wildlife Protection Act, a particularly absurd consequences of listing has been, तो ये जो listing है जिसके अंदर species बढ़ाई गई है different schedules, एक absurdity ये है कि absurd consequence of listing has been the presence of the spotted deer, chital in Schedule 1. Common throughout India, these are invasive in the Andaman Islands and have caused untold harm to the vegetation and herpetofauna. So आपको ये चीज ध्यान रखना कि Schedule 1 में जो है वो spotted deer को डाल दिया गया है इस अमेंडमेंट के बाद, प्लस ये एक इन्वेजिव स्पीसीज है. बेसिकली मिलता कहाँ पे है तो अंडमान आइलैंड्स में, अंडमान. फाइन. So this information is important from the prelims exam point of view. Now impact on people क्या होगा इसका? So but the second more important issue concerns the impact on people. Various Schedule 1 species pose enormous physical, mental and economic harm to people. Crocodiles in the Andamans, leopards in certain pockets and elephants everywhere kill people, destroy their livelihoods and leave lasting psychological impacts. And yet people are told glibly by elite conservationists that they should learn coexistence. बिल्कुल ठीक बात है. कई बार हमें देखते हैं कि जो आसपास रह रहे होते हैं नेशनल पार्क्स के, सो इशू आ जाता लोगों को फेस करनी पड़ती है. The new act elevates wild pigs and nilgai to Schedule 1. Remember, अभी ये भी important information है, fact है for exam prelims exam point of view कि जो new amendment act of 2022 है, that is Wildlife Protection Act amendment की बात कर रहे हैं हम, तो इसमें वाइल्ड पिग्स एंड नीलगाय को भी शेड्यूल 1 में डाल दिया गया बिकॉज शेड्यूल 1 provides the highest protection to these species. The Wildlife Protection Act also has a restrictive view on hunting and the use of animals even when it has been done traditionally for hundreds of years. ठीक बात है, कंजर्व कर रहे हैं तो हंटिंग पे तो रोक लगानी ही पड़ेगी. The third issue जो है according to the authors is that despite the support of many individuals in the forest bureaucracy, the paperwork involved in getting permits for research is tedious and time consuming. The listing of such a large number of species, so कहीं ना कहीं research purpose के लिए भी permission लेना is a tedious and time consuming process बन जाता है times. Could have debilitating effects on research. So environmental NGOs will have a harder time getting permits for research and conservation even of common species such as barn owls. क्यों? क्योंकि अब जब शेड्यूल 1 में स्पीसीज को डाल दिया गया तो हाईएस्ट लेवल ऑफ प्रोटेक्शन ग्रांट की जाएगी एंड उसके लिए अब जो पेपर वर्क या परमिशन रिलेटेड थिंग्स हैं वो कहीं ना कहीं डिफिकल्ट होगी कि कहीं ना कहीं उनको भी और स्ट्रेंथन किया जाएगा. Unfortunately, while lamenting the impact of the WLPA, that is Wildlife Protection Act, on their work, some ecologists have often been insensitive to the large issue at play. Although there has been considerable criticism of Western scientists conducting parachute science in the global south, many ecologists in India have been guilty of the same, swooping in and out of distant remote field sites, taking knowledge and biological material and leaving no benefits. तो कहीं ना कहीं यहाँ पे क्रिटिसाइज कर रही हैं लोग इंडियन इकोलॉजिस्ट जो है उन लोगों की. ठीक है, so in reality after all these three issues that they have underlined, first is related to conservation, second is people's issue, impact on people, and third is the impact on research, need to be attended to with different degrees of urgency, and those whose lives are at stake need to be safeguarded first. Puerile animal rights arguments that result in the loss of human lives and livelihood needs to be disregarded. Second is management action for a species and the habitats need to be tailored to ecology, species, biology and context. So all three fronts पे हमें काम करने की जरूरत है, conservation, people's issue, impact on people and research as well. Right? Often this calls for research or at least regular monitoring by independent agencies which hampered by the scheduling of species. And finally, both citizens and ecologists have a right to observe nature and collect data if they so desire, as long as it does not cause undue harm to populations and follows the basic principles of the ethical treatment of animals. तो ठीक बात है कि आपको मेरे को सबको आज़ादी है सिटीजन्स की, इकोलॉजिस्ट की, right to observe nature, but till the time when you are not harming the nature itself by following the basic principle of ethical treatment of animals. ठीक है, जो भी एनिमल्स हैं उनको भी ethically treat किया जाए. Moving to next. Context and contextual page, the first one is not that important. Second article, a brief one, is related to how synergistic barriers are affecting progress on SDGs. So synergistic barriers have come to the fore as the world is set to achieve only 15% of the 169 targets under Agenda 2030 or the SDG, that is 17 goals that we have under Sustainable Development Goals. तो 169 टारगेट से सिर्फ हम 15% ही अचीव करने के कहीं ना कहीं कर पाएंगे. तो लैमेंटिंग द लैक ऑफ प्रोग्रेस ऑन वेरियस सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट गोल्स, वर्ल्ड लीडर्स एट द एसडीजी समिट इन न्यूयॉर्क, एसडीजी समिट हुई थी इन न्यूयॉर्क September 18 and 19, once again reaffirmed their shared commitment to eradicate poverty and hunger. They recognized that the world was on track to meet only 15% of its 169 targets that make up the 17 goals and have committed to an SDG stimulus of $5 billion annually. Fine. So while this is a political declaration, in fact, needs to be welcomed as a renewed commitment to Agenda 2030, there is little to inspire confidence that there will be greater progress. A 2023 report of the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, that is UNCTD, estimated the investment gap in SDG in developing countries to be greater than $4 trillion. Fine. कि 500 बिलियन की प्लेज कर रहे हैं, अभी बात कर रहे हैं, बट हमें जो रिक्वायरमेंट है वो मोर देन अराउंड जो है किस चीज की जरूरत है. सो सम व्हाट वी नीड अराउंड $4 trillion, especially in the developing countries. So policy making processes are generally robust with a clear view on synergistics की synergy बनाने की जरूरत है between the outcomes, especially when multi-stakeholder approaches to policy making are practiced की multiple countries को मिलके काम करना है. तो of course यहाँ पे multi स्टेक होल्डर अप्रोचेज जो है पॉलिसी मेकिंग में हमें प्रैक्टिस करने की जरूरत पड़ेगी। हाउएवर सिंपली रिकॉग्नाइजिंग interlinks without a robust analysis and understanding of the institutional barriers won't yield the outcomes countries desired। ठीक है, कि जो भी institutional barriers हैं across the countries उनको हमें खत्म करनी होगी, उनको मिनिमाइज करनी होगी, एंड साथ में हमें सिनर्जी जो भी स्टेक होल्डर्स इन्वॉल्व हैं इसमें, यू नो द कंट्रीज एंड अदर ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस, एनजीओज एंड ऑल, सो उन सबको साथ में मिलकर काम करना होगा, देन वी वुड बी एबल टू अचीव दिस on these targets, as otherwise scenario would be like this only. This article is of course related to what we discussed, a case for marriage equality, the legal arguments for the same sex marriages। so आपको ये भी पता होना चाहिए, since एक साइड कोर्ट ने जुडिशरी ने जो है मना कर दिया है कि राइट टू मैरिज इनको नहीं दी जा सकती, लीगलाइज नहीं की जा सकती, अदर साइड on this page article is discussing about the legal arguments for same sex marriage। लीगल आर्गुमेंट्स क्या हैं, क्या दी गई हैं कोर्ट में, तो देख सकते हो यहाँ पे background we have 5 judge constitutional bench which decided on the same sex marriage case by a majority view has held that non heterosexual couples cannot claim an unqualified right to marry। in this article dated April 5th 2023 Rohin Bhatt asserts that queer people as equal citizens of the country cannot wait until society thinks it is acceptable for them to have rights। ठीक है, so जब तक सोसाइटी नहीं यू नो इस चीज को स्वीकार करती, एक्सेप्टेंस देती है कि हाँ इंडिया में भी इस तरह की चीजें, इस तरह की मैरिज परमिसेबल है या हो सकती है, तब तक कहीं ना कहीं इनको वेट करना पड़ेगा। सो देख सकते हो कि मैरिज बिटवीन अ बायोलॉजिकल मैन एंड वुमेन इज अ होली यूनियन एंड सैक्रामेंट एंड संस्कार, दैट इज कल्चर इन इंडिया। दिस इज व्हाट you know said by the center filed an affidavit in the Supreme Court in on March 12, you know, frowning upon same-sex marriage and invoked the accepted view that marriage between a biological man and a woman is a holy union and a sacrament and a sanskar, that is culture in India, and it cannot be, you know, made like this कि इनको same-sex couples जो है marriages जो है वो legalize कर दी जाए। ठीक है, because more than 20 retired judges issued a statement saying that legalization of same-sex marriages will strike at the very root of the family system। so देख सकते हो कि काफी सारे यहाँ पे कहीं ना कहीं जो जजेस हैं, around 20 judges, more than 20 retired judges even issued a statement against this, against legalizing the same-sex marriages, and that such a sensitive issue concerning the society at large be debated in the parliament and state legislature as well। And the Union Law Minister argued that the issue should be left to the wisdom of the people, and law professors such as Tahir Mahmood and G.S. Bajpai have also written about it। So many people have written about it, but not to forget that they are the citizens with equal rights as well। Let us examine some of these arguments. First, it is argued that legalizing queer marriages will destroy the concept of family, which is the fundamental building block of society। For long, queer people have had to deal with their rights being granted as gifts from normative society, but no more। so first तो यही argument है कि कहीं ना कहीं ये जो argument है कि legalizing such homosexual kind of marriages to destroy the concept of family in India, considering the kind setup of our society। but he is saying we don't demand these as a legacy to be bestowed upon us by society, but that they be accorded to us as equal citizens of this democratic nation। For lay persons and lawyers alike, the interpretation of the statute is an art। it is not rare to find headlines with ruling that say frozen parrots are not rotis, frozen parathas are not rotis, or that Sachin Tendulkar is an actor and not a cricketer। so these examples simply show how lawyers often bend over backwards to interpret a statute in a way that fits their case। so he is saying कि lawyers paradise की बात करने की कहीं ना कहीं जो वकील लोग हैं वो अपने हिसाब से चीज़ों को इंटरप्रेट करते हैं। ठीक है, सो यहाँ पे ये इसी रिलेटेड एग्जांपल्स दी गई हैं। अनदर आर्गुमेंट ये है कि इट इज आल्सो आर्ग्यूड दैट द लॉज पर्टेनिंग टू मैरिज नेसेसिटेट्स प्रोक्रिएशन। व्हाइल दिस मे बी ट्रू, देयर सीम टू बी नो अटेम्प्ट्स टू टेक अवे द मैरिज राइट्स ऑफ हेटेरोसेक्सुअल मैरिड कपल्स हु डू नॉट प्रोक्रिएट एज पर म्यूचुअल कंसेंट। हाँ, सो यहाँ पे ये भी मेंशन है कि बेसिक मैरिज की जो ऑब्जेक्टिव वो है प्रोक्रिएशन, राइट, संतान उत्पत्ति। तो कहीं ना कहीं की चाइल्ड बर्थ ऑब्जेक्टिव है, सो ताकि वो जो लिनिएज है वो चलती रहे, बट ही इज गिविंग द आर्गुमेंट कि उनका क्या, जो लोग मैरिड हैं बट वो स्वेच्छा से म्यूचुअली कंसेंट के साथ वो नहीं करते ऐसा, ठीक है, कि दे आर नॉट समवन this following this objective of procreation, ठीक है, even among the heterosexual this couples. So what about them? So while entering into a queer relationship, both parties are aware that they will be unable to procreate. This is called social or circumstantial infertility. The term was initially coined to describe women who did not have children despite no medical condition, and is now used in the context of queer people too. Fine. So ये भी एक argument है. It is also said that the conventional conceptualization of family and marriage are facing evolutionary challenges, and this argument is based on the idea that a family comprises two parents of the opposite sex and their two children. ठीक है, कि even एक ये भी आर्गुमेंट है कि लीगलाइजिंग सच काइंड ऑफ होमोसेक्सुअलिटी गोज अगेंस्ट द कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ फैमिली, जैसे कोर्ट में सरकार ने भी अपनी एफिडेविट में बात की थी इसकी. फाइन. सो दे आर नॉट द हिजड़ा घराना सिस्टम, Maitri, Karar and other forms of alternative familial structures have existed for a long time in the subcontinent as well. So again for this as well he is having an argument. ठीक है. Finally, a legitimate legal need. This is not to argue that marriage will lead to queer liberation. In fact, marriage does not obfuscate but lays bare the caste hierarchies that embolden discrimination and segregation. But despite being a faulty institution, marriage is a legitimate legal need in order to file taxes jointly, inherit property, open bank accounts, and choose nominees for insurance policies. So these are the advantages they might get after having this, right to marriage, this as a legal right. Queer people cannot wait until society thinks it is acceptable for us to have rights. We refuse to be polite citizens. We will continue to be unapologetic about our sexuality, and will continue to challenge widespread notion of the respectability of marriage and procreation. Right? So देख सकते हो, legal recognition of queerness and love should not be opposed by the state or by some supposedly well-meaning proponents of the doctrine of separation of powers. Queerness and queer love deserve not just legal recognition by the state but to be celebrated. So this is what written by Rohin Bhatt. He is a lawyer. ठीक है. सो समवॉट यू कैन से कि जरूरी है हमें, देखो कभी भी ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए कि हमें वन साइड ऑफ द पिक्चर पता हो, सेकंड दूसरी साइड भी जो पिक्चर है उसकी भी पता होनी चाहिए हमें. दिस इज आर्टिकल गिविंग द सेकंड talking about the queer rights and all, that what facilities they might get after they having this legal recognition of right to marriage. So all of this अच्छा एक इंसाइट है, आप इसको रीड करके जरूर एक डाइवर्सिटी ऑफ ओपिनियन आप फॉर्म कर सकते हो इसके बेसिस पे कि क्या उनको फायदे होने वाले हैं, क्यों देना चाहिए, नहीं देना चाहिए. फाइन. So again you have here the page through states and you have lots of politics here. Okay, so we can skip safely these pages. Finally, here we have strengthened human rated rocket is ready for Gaganyaan. So Gaganyaan mission जो है, जो कि इंडिया want to send or planning to send astronauts into space in 2025. So उस डायरेक्शन में कहीं ना कहीं, और देख सकते हो कि हमने काफ़ी हेल्प भी ली है. We have sought a lot of technology from Russia, Europe, US, but many didn't come till now. This is what being said by the ISRO chairman S. Somnath ji. Fine. And Prime Minister ने कल एक मीटिंग भी ली थी, तो उसमें Prime Minister directs ISRO to land man on moon by 2040, work towards interplanetary missions. Fine. तो देख सकते हो कि कल एक मीटिंग हुई थी प्राइम मिनिस्टर के इसरो के चेयरमैन के साथ, अदर साइंटिस्ट. ठीक है. Okay, what else important? So SC divided on allowing unmarried couples to adopt children jointly, of course. Minority and majority जो judges हैं, तो उनमें भी division है. Chief Justice held that Regulation 5(3) of adoption regulation was ultra vires the JJ Justice this Juvenile Justice Act and violative of the fundamental rights, while the majority opinion Justice Bhatt, Kohli and Narasimham said the rule was not void. ठीक है. तो minority ने कहा कि void था, ultra vires था. Regulation 5 clause 3 of adoption regulations was ultra vires the Justice Juvenile Act JJ Act. Okay, so this is what being said by this Trans persons have right to marry under existing law. Experts welcome the SC decision, saying it is a step forward, though it falls short of expectations. So यही है hope and despair. Dejected and disappointed, activists say fight will go on. Yes, so this community, LGBT community, says fight will go on until we get the right. And US-China chaff at India's curbs on laptop and PC imports. Of course, raising wars, US, China, South Korea and Taiwan expressed anxiety at WTO panel meeting over India's new curbs on the computer imports. In 4 countries ने objection raise किया against this new policy of India. Seoul requested India to reconsider implementation of curbs, provide detailed clarification. You can see this. India imported personal computers including laptops worth $5.3 billion in financial year 23 compared to $7.37 billion in financial year 2022 because गवर्नमेंट का फोकस ये है कि आओ और इंडिया में ही बनाओ, मेक इन इंडिया कहता है, तो कहीं ना कहीं हम इंपोर्ट जो हमारी है वो कम करके हम प्रोड्यूस एक्सपोर्ट करें और खुद यहाँ पे डोमेस्टिक मैन्युफैक्चरिंग करें उस चीज की. प्राइम मिनिस्टर हैज अनवील्ड द लॉन्ग टर्म ब्लूप्रिंट फॉर इंडियाज मैरीटाइम इकोनॉमी. तो क्या है? He unveiled the Amrit Kal Vision 2047, a long-term blueprint for the Indian maritime blue economy, while inaugurating Global Maritime India Summit 2023. ठीक है, so the blueprint outlines a strategic initiative aimed at enhancing port facilities, promoting sustainable practices, and facilitating global collaboration. ठीक है, underscoring the role of sea routes in the global trade, he emphasized the need for reliable global supply chain in the post-corona world. In the last decade, the capacity of major ports in India has doubled, and the turnaround time for big vessels has come down to less than 24 hours compared with 42 hours. So this is what, and project worth 20,000 crores rupee has already been, announced in this direction for India's blue economy or the maritime blue economy. Fine. So इन facts को आप use कर सकते हो अपने GS के answers में, GS syllabus में. India to double infrastructure spending to 143 lakh crore rupees between 2024 and 2030, more than twice. Currently कितनी है? 67 lakh crore spent in the past 7 financial years starting 2017. तो हम डबल करने को इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर पे जो हमारी फोकस है अभी करंट सरकार की रही है काफ़ी टाइम से, तो उसको फर्दर और स्ट्रेंथन करने की ज़रूरत है. US प्रेसिडेंट बिडेन टू विजिट इजराइल एज गाजा ग्राउंड इन्वेजन लूम्स. ठीक है, okay, so worldwide you can see what's going on. West Asia is on the brink of abyss, Jordanian king says in Germany. Hundreds are still under the rubble of hospital hit by Israel. Bus rest is, you have news from the sports. Here we have this news from sports only, and then before we stop we have this page from science. And undervaluing faculty fellowship is bad for scientists and science. ठीक है, तो जो fellowship है इंडियन इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ टेक्नोलॉजी यहाँ देख सकते हो, faculty members appointed on fellowships often face challenges in obtaining office and lab space, assessing research facilities at the host institute. In spite of a rigorous selection process and funding, scientists on fellowships have also reported being treated as second class faculty members. So जो fellowship जिन professor जिन scientists को मिलती है to work on a special like PhDs and research purpose के लिए for working on a specific, let us say in the areas, तो उनके साथ कहीं ना कहीं उनकी ये यहाँ पे बात बताई गई है कि उनको काफ़ी सारी चीज़ें फेस करनी पड़ती हैं. दे आर and they are also treated as a second class faculty members. ठीक है, सो इस चीज़ पे ध्यान देने की ज़रूरत है गवर्नमेंट को. In the last 2 decades, India has developed a structured fellowship to help scientists establish research programs at institutes in the country. Even after several years, faculty fellowship programs in India are, you can see, struggling to find a place within the mainstream scientific enterprise. Government-funded scientific institutions in India face crippling challenges related to faculty recruitment, with inordinate delays, age cutoffs, and lack of qualified candidates. So ये सारी issues हमें देखने को मिल रहे हैं इंडिया में. As India aims to expand its science and technology footprints, faculty fellowships serve as a means to attract international scientific community or the talent while retaining trained scientists in the country. बिल्कुल ठीक बात है कि कुछ क्रूड हम प्रोवाइड करेंगे तभी जो लोग हैं वो आके हमारे कंट्री में कहीं ना कहीं जो है रिसर्च करेंगे. So there is a need for conducive environment. Challenges be according to ministry, you can see nearly 40% of the teaching posts at IITs and more than 25% of the sanctioned posts at central universities are vacant. So 14% of the teaching posts at IITs and 25% of the sanctioned posts at central universities are vacant today. Fine. So that's, you can understand the level of issue that we have. So finally we are on the last page. Okay, so before we stop here, let us have a quick look at the this question based on the today's analysis. First is, pooled procurement by the central government when it comes to drug procurement can revolutionize the healthcare system in India. You need to discuss in 150 words for a 10-mark question. And second, the easiest one, which among the following schedule confers the highest protection under the Wildlife Protection Act amended 2022? Fine. Out of the four, you need to pick the one. I think this is the easiest question. So that's it from my side. If you have any query, anything, put the same in the comment section. Until then, take care, keep revising, and stay tuned for tomorrow's Hindu analysis. Thank you.